So I'm doing some repairs and tidy up to this set of VU meters I got from, where was it? I can't remember, some eBay shop. I think they were 7 or 8 quid altogether, and another fiver for the 12 volt AC power supply. Now you get away far better with these by using a different board. You get a board that'll run on DC as well. These ones don't. They sometimes say 9 volt, but 12 volt will do, which is grand, because the first time actually this board was rated 9 volts. Bought a 9 volt AC transformer, came, and it was 12 volts. But since I saw them advertised as being 9 volts as well as 12 volts, I sort of took a risk on it, and it was grand. They're not bad for the price. They're actually pretty cool. You know, you actually get your 2 dials. They're filament lit. Now, this type of board doesn't seem to drive the filaments very well. I added a big chunky switch to this cigar box, just, you know, for extra flair, but mostly because I had a line around, and it turned out to be a great idea because it has enough sort of bounce noise in it to give you the swing up on the meters whenever you fire it up, or, you know, click them on. So the power supply is way off behind the computer and rather inconvenient to retrieve. When I got this, I could not find any instructions at all on how to wire this up, and that's mostly what I'm fixing. All this is grand, but the input wiring, I stuffed it all in there. It's loose, it's causing fucking bother. The thing's been rattled about a lot because I've been making things lately. But basically here, where was it? CN1 is just marked as input. So I did right, ground, left in the end. Isn't that right? Right, left, yeah. And my problem at the minute is that I stuffed a load of grinds in there and they're not really making connection, because, to be honest, I did this as like a, you know, had this sitting around a couple of weeks. I just wanted it to work, so I had a few beers, wired all this up. This is just USB cable. It was a reasonably untidy but tidy way of doing it. And worked out the meters, which are, this is the bit that, you know, there's a total lack of instruction about. You know, this is understandable. Audio input, grounds in the middle. You can get your head around that. But for here you have RVU meter, an RVU LED, so you at least understand what these do. You know, the positive and negative terminals on each of these blocks. This is the power input up here. But on the meters, it wasn't immediately clear. Now, it should have been to me, but these in here, negative, positive, that means it's the meter, because this is a filament lamp in here, so it has no polarity. So the outer terminals on these Chinese style ones are the filament. Now, I have no idea if that'll be standard across the board. The other reason I would suggest getting the different board, it's usually blue. It's a little bit bigger. The blocks are bigger on it, which is nice because this is a fiddly wee bastard to work at. But the other reason would be that I have a 12 volt AC. That's a little tube preamp. It's a 6J1 based thing from China as well, which is actually, that's pretty good. Its own way, but it has problems with this. If you get the neutral wrong, you can't share a power supply on them, because if they reference the same neutral, they create an awful noise, and I'm sure there's a way around it with some electronics, but it's not really my thing. In terms of adjustability, you can have these at speaker power, which they come configured at speaker power, but basically these dials control it. My half-assed sort of, oh well, I'll dial it in a bit way of doing it was simply to take these, play a tone on the computer at about the maximum volume I expected to be listening at, you know, out of the computer output. So mine's line level sort of calibrated and basically do it until I had the meters just about pegged. Now, there's no reference to that, you know, to anything else proper. But that does work, it does the job. We'll see in 6 with the AC in. And of course I'm sitting doing this, and I mean, I have the board loose in the case because I just sort of stabbed it all together, and I mean, it looks pretty cool in the end. I'll swing it around a second while you get a look at it. I mean, it's literally a cigar box with some VU meters sticking out of it. They actually work pretty well, and I'll be sure to come back and include some, but you know, they're nice little units for, that's a bit better. They're nice little units, you know, the backlights aren't being driven particularly well in these by this board, but I'm not inclined to dick with it because it's, I just did wee brass screws, hole saw, bang straight through. I was a bit rough with it, to be honest. But anyway, I'm not inclined to dick with this too much because these 2 power resistors, yeah, they get a bit fucking toasty. You know, enough that they'll give you a bit of a surprise. My main problem at the minute is that this does not provision much in the way of room for stuffing 4 wires into the middle, 1, 2 into each of them. These are grand. Again, I used USB cables. A handy way of doing it because, you know, you can sort of keep track of everything, and on top of that there is some shielding in them. Unless that's a particularly shitty one, in which case there might not be, but yeah. I have accidentally pulled wires out of this. Yeah, the connector blocks aren't great on it. But the big problem I'm having is, you know, it's losing ground and I'm tapping on things to make it work, and sometimes it's a shitty connection, sometimes it's good, you know, it lifts the ground and then everything goes quiet or tinny. So I'm gonna, oh, I soldered these together. I didn't know I'd done that. Sometimes drunk me's actually kind of good at this shit, you know. He thinks about future me that's gonna come back and fix his mistakes. That's generous of him, at least, to do such things. There's very little I love more in life than these strippers. I'm sure your strippers are great too, but I think they're like 8 or 9 quid off Amazon, CK or something like that. But yeah, I really abuse them. You know, they don't like it, but they'll do twin and earth and all that. And it makes them shockingly useful. Plus, I mean, you don't have to do much work with them to make them pay for themselves. But yeah, VU meters, they're that'll fucking do. I mean, like, I've just stuffed them into a cigar box here, and I need to do something with this. I think I have standoffs in this box, actually. And I'm using my electrical tape as a stand for the soldering iron, so that's not gonna work out. Yeah. There. The pliers will do that job. I'm sure at some point during this, I've lost some of the discussion about the actual VU meters because I cocked up. Mostly I cocked up in that same exact way because I get into a position where, you know, you're holding this holder like this and all, apparently burning the fuck out of yourself with it, but on top of that you're not giving yourself enough room to retract it again because your baby finger, you know, it only really has motive power and one direction. Anyway, yes, I do have heat shrink, but it's somewhere. And again, not exactly a high integrity application going on here, you know, this is just it's a fucking set of VU meters in a cigar box. But yeah, I'll go over these inputs and outputs a bit more as I do them. But I went right, ground, left, middle's ground on these. Those inputs, well, I suppose I didn't explain that, it doesn't explain it either. That eventually just decided that it must work this way because they work as both power and line level meters, you know, via these adjustment pots. But what happens is essentially I have side by side here, so say that's in, that's out, doesn't actually matter. It would be better to bar these together right here, for audio fidelity and all that. It would be best to do this right here on the box. But basically, you know, your hots, your in and your out are a direct connection to each other, and this meters it as if this wire basically went in. You know, this was directly connected together, then you would just have a T shape rather than, you know, running through this meter. So realistically, you know, if you want to improve the situation, fuck, you see, now I've covered the actual, okay, no, I know what that is. That was the first hurdle. I reasoned that since it was a meter, it must work that way. My reasoning turned out sensible enough for the most part. The next step on the lack of documentation was the meters themselves, and that's your meter bit there. There is a positive and negative, and it's marked on the board, so it's not too bad. And in fact, the backlight ones actually have a positive and negative as well, because it assumes that you may use ones with LEDs in them. There's our 4 grounds. Again, if you want to make a neat job of this, it wouldn't be too hard with a set of... Yeah, you know what, I think you can actually buy these linked direct together. I'm sure you can somewhere. But all you would need to do is essentially, I suppose the smart thing to do would actually be to put a little ground plate in, since they all end up sharing a ground in this arrangement anyway. And basically, if you have them, let's say that's in and that's out, then link those 2 hots here and there, and then take off them to the meter. Not that I'm going to do the sensible thing or correct my mistakes that much, because I don't know, I'll probably squeeze these into something else I'm building soon, because I want to replace them with the 52mm versions, which are much better, just because they're bigger. And they're pretty cool, you know, rather than having that style of plate, they have you know, a big bezel thing. It's pretty cool looking. And I lost a couple of connections over here. God, I tend to all of these. I can't. Might actually be what my problem is, if I'm honest. Because I think these connectors sort of need something squishy to make them work. You know, they have a bit of spring to them, but, well, I mean, they're not fucking great. Alright, stand off. It's always good whenever you know, don't take into account things like, you know, the obviously large components. Yeah. It's a shame that installed quite well too. I didn't know if that was going to work at all, but I figured balsa's kind of easy to deal with. Probably shouldn't hit circuit boards with hammers, screwdriver or not. That would be the scientific opinion on such things. Can't see any harm done though. Alright, but anyway, Chinese audio. So far it's treating me alright. I have an SMSL Sanskrit as well. Now it's a little less this kind of hooky eBay stuff and a little more has a bit of a name. It's quite nice. Oh, it's a bit more up there. That's approximately 10 times the price of anything else here. I mean, literally, these are about £6 or so. Any more than a tenner, and you're probably being robbed. I'll get these hooked back up to their power supply. I'm not going to bother with a jack plug because I'd have to untangle the one that's also mangled into that to find it, so I'll just wire it back up. As is, I see a problem. And that's why you don't properly tighten anything up. So you can do that kind of malarkey. That's a bit tighter. I know this is trampy, but it does just for keeping it in place and sort of stopping some of the bother. I'm also going to quickly clean this out, maybe Herbert or something. But I see you in a minute. The day is tomorrow because obviously I let my camera battery die. One mistake I made was I always get this mixed up because it makes sense one way, it makes sense the other way, but basically these are actually on top of each other, not side by side, as I said. Doesn't really matter, the idea is still the same. You know, I just explained it all backwards, as you do. Yeah, so you'll never see the backlights in daylight, but yeah, focus. Nothing? There. Yeah, if you flick the switch just right, you get that. But yeah, they're all good and working. I have these come off the SMSL, the DAC. This sort of, you know, because of the wiring arrangement, it's basically in parallel with in parallel? No, not parallel, something else. It's not in series with it at any rate. You know, it's sort of teed off. Kind of parallel, kind of not. Anyway, it's basically sensing the line that comes from here into the amp, and then the preamp I have on the tape loop, just so I have some control over it. And I'll hit something I'd look for a song that would make these sort of dance about a bit. But yeah.
Oh, woman, I need you. Don't make me suffer, I'm a bleeder. You hurt me bad when you run away. You make me feel so good when you stay. But don't let me get lonely.
Hello? Hello?